Shaking the Tree. Tonight we explore portions of the secret doctrine as described by the great mystics of the past, and more recently during our times. Esoteric Christianity is a term used to describe that which is revealed from within, about our relationship to universal consciousness, or by the language of the last 2 millennium, as Christ consciousness. Both the teachings in the New Testament and in the spirit of the age, in the coming age of Aquarius. That there has been a profound change or shift within the spiritual sphere is being reflected gradually in our world of generated existence, a manifestation of spiritual evolution from the divine world that is transforming consciousness about our true nature as spiritual beings. Esoteric Christianity seeks to explain the hidden meaning behind the teachings using scientific method of spiritual research. Developing spiritual insight takes practice, and usually comes gradually as the aspirant of truth is slowly transformed by the process itself. This is the modern form of initiation that has evolved since ancient times. As the aspirant becomes more conscious of their inner soul, the divine seed originating from within cultivates a longing for something, a growing awakening of consciousness of itself. This spirit impulse within represents our connection directly with the divine, and when cultivated and nurtured, develops a new spiritual being born of spiritual intelligence that expands and emanates outward. The gradual ascent of the soul's awareness to consciousness of itself is developed through the practice of prayer and meditation, a gestation that finally gives birth to spiritual intelligence, reborn as a new spiritual being, the human spirit. The significance of this evolution of Christ consciousness in our modern age gives rise to the great potential and possibility for spiritual awareness during our time. How this message of esoteric Christianity expresses itself today comes from the spiritual world, where upon developing spiritual insight, our faculties of spiritual intelligence, we see what is hidden from the physical senses in direct contact with forces from the spiritual world. This is accomplished by understanding our part in our own regenesis. The great epics of ancient human history not revealed in the history books are interpreted by developing this spiritual intelligence as experience in direct contact with the divine world. This reveals powerful forces occurring from the spiritual sphere of existence that are occurring and reflected in our physical world that invisibly influence our thoughts and behavior. That there is a divine hierarchy not observable by the naked eye, but nonetheless as real, or more so, than our physical world of generated existence, is at first dimly perceived. Our part in the divine plan reveals spiritual beings of a higher nature that manifest as the laws of creation, destruction, and regenesis. Sometimes depicted as angels, archangels, seraphim, cherubim, among others in the ancient texts, are real beings that guide, manifest, and shape the world presented to our senses, both physically and spiritually. The particular powers attributed to these beings manifest as power of creation, form, movement or motion, space, consciousness, and time. Throughout the ancient epics of human history, according to the occult sciences, these archangels influence our daily existence as time spirits or guides, in a way that subtly reflects the light of the divine into the everyday world of mankind. Archangel Michael, often depicted vanquishing a sword triumphantly over conquering the serpent or dragon, has recurred in periods past, as recently as the Christian epoch 2,000 years ago, and in the narrative of the Old Testament. Many monasteries, cathedrals, and churches dedicated to Archangel Michael as Christian sanctuaries began to appear as early as the 4th century. The awakening of this spirit impulse is celebrated each year during the time of the fall equinox. Establishing its rightful place in the fall festival, this celebration reflects a feast dedicated to Archangel Michael. Often depicted as Jesus, is Michael the only archangel that is God the Son and co-equal to the Father. Some early Protestant scholars identified Michael with the pre-incarnate Christ, symbolized in the encounter of the child and the archangel in Revelation 12, and also in the attributes ascribed to him by the prophet Daniel, as related in the book of the Old Testament. This spirit impulse, celebrated in the fall feast of Michael, expresses this tradition. Today, Michael emerges again as the spirit of our times, ushering in the new age of Aquarius. This marks the gradual transition from the dark ages of the Kali Yuga period to the coming period of light or enlightenment, where all mankind is now endowed with the knowledge of its own power to transform itself by developing the occult spiritual faculties of spiritual intelligence. This spiritual intelligence that gradually transforms the human spirit occurs from within the individual as the spirit impulse of Archangel Michael, and forms the knowledge of our divine spiritual being by developing dormant spiritual faculties that we are all born with but remain yet undeveloped. These spiritual faculties of recognition, acknowledgement, and acceptance reflect the light of Michael from within, the ancient divine wisdom of the heavenly Sophia, today being reborn of Eve, and her redemption is the resurrection in the second coming as the new being of Sophia. The descent of the goddess wisdom is met by our own ascent of the spirit, as above, so below. As the descent of the new Sophia in the coming age, Eve returning in the form of the new Sophia is evident everywhere in today's world, reflecting the divine light from through the lens of Michael. The language of the dialogue and the terms of the narrative by our thoughts and translated into action by the spirit impulse of Michael is reflected in the evolution of our own soul consciousness. This gradual awareness of itself is the emerging knowledge of the phenomenal world of our own thoughts and of thinking itself as the fulcrum of creation, and is the fulfillment and promise of the new Christ consciousness, the great gift of wisdom to mankind. That it is unfolding in the present is up to us to recognize, acknowledge, and accept. The New Jerusalem we no longer await, it awaits us. Esoteric Christianity today, ushered in by the light of Michael through the reflective power of Sophia during the coming age, beckons the ancient wisdom of Eve, the descent of the heavenly Sophia, overcoming the serpent within, the redemption of Eve. Unity with the divine is at hand, as liberty of the human spirit is no longer bound to the world of the flesh. But as with unity, source of all unification with the divine is preceded by act of division. As spoken in the words of the Gospel of St. John, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That impulse of the Spirit within, longing for the unspoken in the light of the eternal present, is ever resonant in the tone of the eternal voice, the source of all. By its light and its call, we develop the ears to hear and the eyes to see, and discover the road within, where the aspirant encounters the gateway to the path of self-knowledge. Marking the beginning of the sacred journey home, this spirit impulse seeks higher ground in understanding ourselves and the world beyond, that primal impulse experiencing ideas not limited to the physical senses alone. Understanding the spirit impulse of the Christ is sometimes a daunting task, often misunderstood or misinterpreted, perhaps in some instances even deliberately or intentionally. As primary division is necessary for reunification, this spirit impulse in the Word, the original unity, is divided from itself, as in the S-word, or the word sword. The divisor of the expression word is sword. The word is divided by an S, as in the word spirit, soul, or serpent, representing the snake or separation, also depicting the river we will someday have to cross, and when the alphabetical letter S precedes the word, becomes sword, the division of the word, the S-word. In angelic mythology and symbolism, Archangel Michael stands firm, holding aloft a flaming sword of justice, by which the two-headed serpent of fear and ignorance is slain. First observed as a healing angel, and then over time as a protector and the leader of the angelic army of God against the forces of evil, finally, Michael triumphs over the dominating forces of the serpent within. Dividing and conquering this monster within occasions the liberation of the soul, reuniting once again the spirit with the source of all, the Blessed One, as one in the divine light of the eternal Spirit. This spirit impulse of Michael's sword, emerging today, is that impulse of the Christ consciousness as its source, the flaming sword of justice. That which liberates the human spirit not only from the physical world alone, but by ascension of soul consciousness within. The spirit is thus liberated anew. Since the time of Christ's descension into human form in the body of Jesus of Nazareth, the future reign of Archangel Michael, triumphant by Book of Revelation, defeats the dragon during our current epoch. Upon entering the age of Michael, that spirit impulse of Christ consciousness represents evolution of spiritual consciousness, as characterized in this current age of Aquarius. In emerging spiritual awareness, preparation is made for the next cycle's evolution of soul consciousness, comprising still yet higher spiritual awareness. As reflected in the higher spiritual worlds, so we have evolved the impulse of human consciousness to seek those higher worlds. This disclosure is not what we have been led to expect from the outside world, and many still await the knowledge withheld that is rightly theirs about vanquishing the serpent within. We see this emergence of the new age, especially with the onset of the Society for Theosophy, in Helena P. Blavatsky's late 19th century works, Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, and continued in the works of many others, such as Edgar Cayce and Rudolf Steiner, during the early and mid-20th century. For over 100 years now, entering the gestational period of the age of Michael, preserved the divine wisdom upholding the ancient doctrine of Rosicrucianism, Eastern Theosophy, and Anthroposophy that comprised the heart of esoteric Christianity. By these tools of knowledge, intuition, and inspiration, the life of the human spirit is emancipated. Through recognition, acknowledgement, and acceptance, awareness of what is occur as self-evident truths revealed of themselves. This transformation, key to renewed life, is demonstrated by the resurrection as expressed in this new dialogue of Christ consciousness during the age of Michael. In this renewed spirit impulse, we experience the divine image of Christ as acquiring spiritual knowledge, cultivating intuition, and becoming divine inspiration itself, as described in the Gospels of the New Testament, emerging now as a transformation of the heart. This revelation is occurring at all levels in all areas of human existence. We see this developing particularly during the Theosophy movement in India, Europe, and the United States, and the following movement of Anthroposophy with Rudolf Steiner during the early 1900s. The sacred wisdom of the East, so carefully guarded for millennia, finally emerged in the West just since over the last 150 years. This is not only reflected in the women's rights movements over the past century, with the advent of the suffragette movement in the late 1800s, also establishment of women's voting rights and abortion rights, but also in the civil rights movements of the 1960s and the emergence of the counterculture movement. The forerunners of the New Age were determined to expound these realities to a population that is now ready to receive it. To the extent that they are successful, remains still in our hands today. Those waiting for the birth of the second coming need not continue, for its time has come. Spiritual resurrection in the age of Michael predominantly emphasizes the rise of the feminine, the assertion of the female nature in its proper role, again towards balance in the universal laws. That Isis resurrected as Sophia is to be born in the Michael age serves humanity by maturing and evolving our spiritual consciousness nature in wisdom. Opportunities for cultivating the individual soul first becomes the desire of our objective senses, the impulse to thrive and flourish in greater awareness. It is just this spirit impulse that we are here concerned with. The truth of this spirit impulse, recognized in transcendence, now becomes common knowledge. Much sought after and now highly valued are the gifts of the Spirit, and as recipients and benefactors of the divine wisdom, the call to act upon what is necessary for the attainment of the higher worlds for all of mankind is up to each and every one of us. Heralding the contractions of this second birth, in this second coming there are three great prefacing messages, among many others, announcing the arrival of this new age of Michael. Manifest in three provocations, the age of Michael reveals itself as the descension of the goddess of wisdom, Sophia, disclosure of the reality of karma and reincarnation, and recognizing and acknowledging the guardian within. Heralding the age of Michael and the descent of the goddess of wisdom, the heavenly Sophia, is delivery of twins, two great truths long obscured from everyday ordinary Western consciousness. These are the universal law of causality or destiny, otherwise known as karma, and the spiritual law of return, otherwise referred to as reincarnation. too long these important pieces of the puzzle have been deliberately hidden behind the veil of dogmatic theology, obscuring the original teachings. As recently revealed in the West through theosophy, the onset of the spirit impulse in the age of Michael, intuitively we now can understand, and the importance of this doctrine and its role and significance in the ascension of the soul of humanity. The third great message heralding the delivery of the Michael age deals with the guardian. There are two in this case, and both dwell within. One is a true guardian, your constant guide and source of spiritual strength. This guardian is bound by several universal laws. It cannot refuse you if you have proven worthy. It cannot intentionally or otherwise mislead you. It will protect and guide you in all ways possible. The knowledge obtained by or through the guardian cannot be deception. The guardian is one being above all that you can trust. It is imperative to begin a dialogue with your guardian and obtain its name. The second guardian is the master within. As with the first guardian, the key to developing an inner spiritual relationship with this master is critical for recreation, fruition, and liberation of the spirit from symbolic spiritual death. When the aspirant has accomplished this, the aspirant becomes an initiate. Everyone is to become aware of this during the current age of Michael, as is becoming self-evident. These will become the initiates in the age that follows. When we become one with the Master within, we offer up the fruit of liberty to the Spirit. This evolution of human consciousness mirrors the evolution of the higher worlds of the Spirit through symbolic death and resurrection. This emancipation of the soul through union with the renewed human spirit, we return to the divine home from whence we came, our eternal home. In conclusion, esoteric Christianity during our times today, emerging during the age of Michael, is shaking the tree of humanity to its very roots as regenesis of the human spirit. It is in the here and now. The second coming is upon us. The redemption of Eve has come, reborn of the divine wisdom, the descent of spiritual intelligence in the new age of Aquarius as the divine goddess of wisdom, Sophia. That Archangel Michael is to usher in the coming age of enlightenment by emanating divine harmony from within every individual, reflected in the mirror of the new Sophia, the redemption of Eve as born again, as regenesis of the human spirit. As we continue today shaking the tree of patriarchal domination in this new age of the spirit, Michael represents the predominant force of this spirit impulse, the rebirth of Christ consciousness in our spiritual evolution. Giving birth to this second coming as spirit, she will guide the whole of humanity toward reunion with the divine. Christ manifest as reborn in the spirit impulse of Michael is now ready to give birth again. The second coming is here. It is being delivered here and now. We are no longer waiting for her. She is waiting for us. This represents the fulfillment of the Word becoming, with the birth of the Christ in flesh as the first Michael revelation, and the flesh becoming spirit in the second Michael revelation. The flaming sword of justice that divides the real from the unreal, the wheat from the chaff, the worthwhile from the worthless, knowledge from illusion, truth from superstition. The symbol of Michael beholding Eve standing aloft, her heel crushing the head of the serpent within each and every one of us. Therein lies a symbol of the spirit impulse worthy of characterizing the current age of Michael.